Racism very much alive in Australia, says Dr. Charles Teo, an article from the Herald Sun on January 18, 2012. This man, due to give the Australia Day speech to New South Wales citizens, will be taking the opportunity to express his thoughts on racism and how it is still very much alive. Amongst many of his own and his family's experiences with racism, he mentions that the reassurance to Indians of no racism in Australia is bullshit. He, on first-hand account, still experiences the degradation of culture that is racism in day-to-day life, despite having been born in Australia and having an accolade of world-renowned neurosurgeon. Nonetheless, even with Dr. Teo having such prestige and having done more for this country than most other citizens, one thing sets him aside from what most Australians would call Australian: his Chinese background, perhaps including his major signifier of Oriental background, his facial appearance. So with this being said, he is marginalised or discriminated against for being different to what is considered the dominant. This point brings me to the purpose of this multimedia presentation, to answer the question, how might education mediate difference and dominance? The idea is to look at how a current social issue presented in the media can be converted into and used as curriculum material to be taught in a classroom setting. While doing this, it is necessary to look at how this positions Australia in regards to identity. One of Dr. Teo's major arguing points in this article, and while uncertain, most likely in his speech, is the 2009 racism attacks on Indian students in Melbourne. The wave of discriminative actions towards Indians and their culture has consequently caused a fall in international student rates of 30.3% since 2009. It could therefore be said that Australia's identity has been blemished with these actions, causing reason to believe that racism is truly still alive. Placing emphasis upon the definition of tolerance, particularly in regards to the racial attacks on Indians, it is clear that Australia lacks intolerance also. As quoted from Lecture 7, Difference and Diversity, and originally cited in an essay from beyondintractability.org, tolerance is the appreciation of diversity and the ability to live and let others live. It is the ability to exercise a fair and objective attitude towards those whose opinions, practices, religion, nationality, and so on differ from our own. If Australia is to be what it labels itself as, a multicultural country, tolerance is amongst the first and perhaps the most important aspects that all citizens need to practice. Despite the negative cloud that lingers around this topic, some positives can be retrieved, such as the ability to convert this social issue into an educative experience taught to students in hope that they, in the future, don't follow the same trains of thought as those who have discriminated against the Indian culture. This brings us to section 2 of the presentation. Here, focusing on a curricula suitable for 7th grade students, we must convert the issue of racism into a learning experience that holds potential to transform the thoughts of students in regards to difference. Many attempts of this have been made, some successful, others not so much. However, with the continuous advocating for a multicultural society, this teaching topic is becoming increasingly important. It is also important that it be taught at a younger age because, as the saying goes, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, or at least it poses more of a challenge. With this being said, it is also necessary that the topic is taught in a hands-on, visual, and perhaps even situational-based manner to attain a motive and therefore the most effective response to the learning experience. To teach a tolerance to difference, the students would first be split into 2 random groups, the randomization working to simulate different cultures. One group would be what society considers dominant, white-skinned English human beings, while the other group would play the role of various other cultures. Specific cultures are not necessary here, rather emphasis is placed on the notion of this being a different group. Once split, the students will be told the tasks of the activity. They are to once having found a partner from the opposite group, follow a series of instructions written on pieces of paper spread throughout the school grounds and arrive at the finishing point first before the other pairs. There is, however, a twist. The first and starting piece of paper will be read by the teacher in the classroom. Both groups will receive the same beginning instructions, however the different group will have to undergo them while carrying their own and their partner's school bag, while the dominant group will have to carry an encyclopedia-style book. An example of this instruction would be for both groups to make their way to the tall tree in the corner of the school grounds as quickly as possible. More directions will be found at this destination, telling the different group to leave their own bag and carry their partner's bag only, while the dominant group will be told to place their encyclopedias into their bags. These patterns of unequitable treatment to different students will continue throughout the entire course, including while back inside the classroom where topics such as maths will be taught throughout the morning. The dominant group will be provided with calculators, while the different group will have to use their heads. The dominant group will be privileged with the ability to use pens, while the different group will have to keep using pencils. The different group will be ignored when wanting to ask or answer a question, while the dominant group will be answered and praised for their hard work. It is hoped that in giving this learning experience, particularly having it extended over a majority of the day and applying it to regular classroom activities, the students being subjectified will feel less needed, underprivileged, and in general of lesser importance to those of the dominant group. With this being said, it is also hoped that the dominant group notices the different group's turmoil and feels unworthy of their own fair treatment. After students have had their last lunch break of the day, the remainder of class time will be used as an explanation to the day's events, detailing the logic behind the difference and dominance and emphasizing the importance, based on how the students felt, to tolerance of cultures other than their own. The key to this activity is the student's level of emotional response to the mistreatment of the different group. It is, after all, difficult to practice multiculturalism if you don't believe its motives to be peace-bringing to all. Applying the same train of thought to the self and other axes of identity, it is narrowing the zone of difference between the two binary opposites. While self and other will never be so alike they fuse into one, the closer they are together, the more effective a multicultural society is likely to work. Overall, looking at the event, society as it is today, the projected outcome from undergoing in this activity and the possibilities it could bring for Australia's future, the activity holds many positive aspects. As a summarised explanation, in order to reduce discrimination, marginalisation and overcome any disadvantages certain groups may receive, it focuses on the education of the younger society, giving them positive and tolerating thoughts of difference through situational learning, whereby students are placed in the position of those who are considered to be different, and others watch as that group evidently becomes marginalised through racial discrimination. Their level of understanding is dependent on the emotional reactions that students take to this treatment. While this is only one group of 30 or so students being taught in this emotive manner, a start has to be made somewhere, and where better to start than with those who have had the least amount of exposure to discriminative acts.